to note that this isn't a hierarchy. It's not that one is better than another. There's been some discussion I've heard that maybe it shouldn't have been numerically, distinguished, because it gives the idea that this is a progression, or one stage is better than another. That's not true. It simply defines perhaps a moment of time or developmental time in terms of our relationship to our faith. I want to make one last note about stage 4, or the complexity. And that is that, in my experience anyway, the journey into complexity is lonely. And while there are resources and people who can support you along the way, I find it helpful to remember that its very purpose is to help you become your own agent. And no one can do that for you. No one can even do that with you. By its nature, it is distinctly and uniquely yours. To make matters more lonely, as we talked about a moment ago, not everyone enters this stage. Some simply never arrive here. Some may not be wired to question, and some might poke their heads into it, decide it's too risky, and turn back. There's nothing wrong with that. There is a lot of comfort in retaining the simplicity on this side of complexity, and I think it's important that we're careful not to judge or look down upon people who make a different choice at that stage. You give up a lot entering the complexity. Of course, you give up a lot not entering it too. Hopefully tonight we'll hear from some well-traveled companions who can provide insight and guidance along the way, wherever your journey takes you. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you get a lot of value out of the experience tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, for outlining everything that I was going to say. So I can leave now. I sometimes forget to breathe, so bear with me. I'm really, really honored to be with you today, and that's not something I'm just saying. I'm really honored, and I see so many people that I've known, whom I've known, and along the many, many years that I've been living, and thank you for being part of my life. Thank you, Katie and Lindsay and Sunstone and your sponsors for inviting me here today. But I want to know why you're here today and what you want to take home with you. And I hope so much that I can give you something, that I will feel the Spirit to give you something to take home that will help you through your days. Oh, thank you. I forget I'm really tall. Does that help? Okay. Regardless of this carefully typed and well-edited speech, I hope that the Spirit will be with me. Because I'm a writer, I cling to my dear words, so bear with me. During my 20-year hiatus from Mormonism, which I'll mention shortly, I visited a good number of megachurch and African-American congregations where the crowd was not very quiet, but one full of passion and sounds of amen and hallelujah. So maybe because I have a little bit of those beloved preachers and congregations left in me, and maybe because it's something I've always wanted the courage to do, I am going to ask you to get noisy with me. First of all, remembering that the word religion is based on the root word lig, L-I-G, which means to bind or connect together. Religion is meant to reconnect and heal, not to separate. So I'm asking all of you right now to join in with a big yes to feeling Spirit here today and experiencing the beauty of an open mind and heart. All right, yes. One more time, yes. All right, remember to say yes in the morning. When I say yes, I have a better day. It's a good thing, thank you. One of the reasons you're here today is because you have an interest in how to navigate the Mormon terrain, including its borderlands. Some of you have wondered if the term borderlands suggests you might be in an edgy place where danger lurks. But I'd like to get beyond any fears, any definitions, those territorialities, those binary distinctions between right and wrong and good and bad. As you know, I've been asked to speak on the subject of finding the permission to explore and own your own spirituality. Perhaps I should define the word spirituality, though it is actually more of a feeling than a substance to be identified or a word with an exact definition. Sometimes when I'm in a spiritual state, and you'll recognize this, my heart pounds, I can be moved to tears, and the feeling is like having a river of spirit flowing through your body, a river that doesn't stay where you can own it or dam it up, but a river from a greater source that flows into, through, and beyond you. And it comes when it will. It will not come on demand. When I speak of spirituality, which is about believing in something much greater, much larger, more infinite, and definitely more mysterious than anything I can comprehend, I'm speaking with the belief that there is a God who loves all of us, that everyone has a place in God's eyes, whether or not you walk at the left, the right, or the middle of the well-traveled road toward God. If the best scriptures are to be believed, no one is less than another. Not the believers, the non-believers, those who trust in a God who loves them, those who do not. A hymn all of us love to sing says that we are all children of God. The Hindus say that we are cells on the body of God. I suggest that we are the hands, the feet, the toes, the heart, the undifferentiated cells on this body of God. You are in God, and God is in you. You can't escape from a God who is with you wherever you are. A favorite poet of mine by the name of Hafiz, I used to say Hafiz, and a Persian on the airplane said, no, it's Hafiz. So I'm trying to get used to saying it the new way. He lived from 1320 to 1389, and he's the most beloved of Persian poets. And he helps me feel the ecstasy of spirit every time I read his words. I am, he says, a hole in a flute that the Christ's breath moves through. Listen to this music. Hafiz's ecstatic vision of life, love, and God is something I aspire to myself. To celebrate God rather than be weighted down by oughts and shoulds. God is joy. God is music, and may this music be with us today. May we all for a few minutes allow ourselves to think large and to receive. Each of us speaking today has been asked to tell our Mormon story. So my story is much like many of yours. 12 of my 16 great-great-grandparents came across the plains in the mid-1800s in wagons and with handcarts, sacrificing their all for their new beliefs. My parents were totally involved in every aspect of the religion, father as bishop, mother as primary president, and much more. Our entire sensibility and social life revolved around ward dinners, talent shows, music, dance festivals, testimony meetings, 2 Sunday meetings, a midweek meeting. I went to BYU, married a returned missionary in the temple, and became the mother of 4 sons. You've heard this story before. But gradually the pretty picture I thought I was entitled to, a smiling, happy family living together in blissful harmony into eternity, became instead a blurry, smeared picture. The covenants and promises I thought had been made were dissolving. Reality hit me hard in the head when my first son was born with hemophilia, a blood disease that not only frightened me with the constant threat of an uncontrollable bleeding episode, but which ended in his death at age 3. This was my first loss of innocence, my first disillusionment. And I sometimes suspected that my oldest son's life and death was punishment for something I had done wrong. Reality hit me in the head again after I married a very intelligent, kind, good man whom I thought was a fine catch for this girl going somewhere. He soon became disillusioned with Mormonism and also with what it meant to be married. We tried for 30 years to reach some kind of compromise. We had an eternal family after all. But many arguments and inconclusions later, we went our separate ways. As far as I could see, life had gone haywire and my Achilles heel had been struck with a poison arrow. How could any of these happen to sweet, earnest me? I'd obeyed all the rules, and I was supposed to be repaid with blessings. And when I didn't get what I was supposed to get, I was hurt. I felt betrayed. I got mad, angry. The great me had been wronged, and I willfully abandoned my what seemed impossible ideal altogether. Mormonism was a cultural sheath too tight to wear, and I didn't fit in that dress anymore. I went into a very deep black hole for 7 years. I didn't care about anything. I abandoned all of it. And on top of that, I was stuck in a constant replay of my sad, sad story of how I'd been wronged, the one that could bring crocodile tears to my eyes every time I thought about it. But one day, I had the stark realization that something was wrong with this non-picture. Sure, I'd been knocked in the head a few times, But I finally realized there was a big patch of something I did not understand. What about the book of Job? What about all of his trials and how he still loved God? If I kept hitting myself in the head, I would eventually concuss and become a cauliflower. So I needed to get out of the self-torture mode. I needed to escape from the hell of my own personal narrative. In hindsight, I can see that my idealism, my expectations, my sense of entitlement, the things I thought I deserved, in other words, my arrogance, was the very thing that took me down. I was in love with a pretty picture, but not with the whole picture. I needed help. A friend suggested a therapist who worked with clients from strong religious backgrounds. After speaking with her for an hour, she said something very important. You are a spiritual person. Stop denying that in yourself. That's who you are. And that was the moment I shifted into a reclamation mode to put myself together again. I attended many different churches to see if I could find the spirituality I missed, as well as find a place to belong. I worshiped with Lutherans, Baptists, Catholics, Muslims, Congregationalists, Unitarians, among many others. I participated in ritual with shamans in Peru and Ecuador, with goddess worshippers in the Yucatan. I studied with a Tibetan Buddhist monk in North India. I listened to many ideas in gatherings very foreign to the Mormon chapel and its cultural hall. I opened my eyes wider to the people who might be considered the other, the Gentiles, the non-believers, the unsaved. I observed other spiritual persuasions not through my own cultural lens, but rather on their often inspired terms. And finally, on one Sunday morning at a Denver megachurch with its own rock band and gospel choir, and yes, I danced, I received Jesus Christ, maybe for the first time, and I felt his redemptive love dabbing at my wounds and healing my broken heart. My walk away from Mormonism was never a complete dismissal or rejection of the religion or its practices. It always lurked in my bones. But because of my away years, I came to a much deeper gratitude for the infinite variety as well as the remarkable similarity of God's children. I learned to look and listen differently, to think large and receive. So what does this all have to do with giving yourself permission to explore and own your own spirituality? How can you find it if you don't do it in a formally prescribed way? First of all, celebrate your own connection to God, your own prayers and thoughts, your conversations with the divine, your sense of aliveness. This is yours. Allow the divinity of music to take you to the innermost place in your soul, as well as that soaring place of lightness where you want to sing and dance with all and everything. Connect with spirit in exquisite prose and poetry. As Hafiz says, a poet is someone who can pour light into a cup, then raise it to nourish your beautiful, parched, holy mouth. Spirituality can be experienced on a walk or hike through nature where the divine speaks through the gold of trembling aspen leaves, the gentle quilt of snow on the branch of an evergreen, and the sobering as well as ecstatic view from the top of a mountain. It can be experienced by a painter who examines a flower petal. Each time she looks, the flower is a new revelation, a slightly different shade of color, a shade not seen the first time. By concentrating and focusing on what this flower is all about, the painter is receiving it, engaging in an act of redemptive love by her very attention to this small but significant creation from which God is speaking. By observing and paying attention to what we see and hear, Spirit refines and works through us. We can be a microcosm of redemptive love when we look with more care at each other. And we don't turn away when we dislike what we've seen or heard. We need to sort through the layers to find that small lighthouse of God within each of us. Though it may take a million tries to clear the cloudiness in our eyes, there is much to celebrate in each other. When I returned to church after being away for 20 years, I walked into a ward house in Salt Lake City feeling like a deer in the headlights.